He spat the words at me. Barren, useless. My own husband, the man I loved, told me I would die old and alone because I couldn't give him a child. Then he kicked me out of our home. For years his cruel prophecy haunted me until life decided to write a very different and much more ironic ending for us both. Welcome back to Granny's Truths. If you're new here, thank you for joining a community of wisdom, survival, and second chances. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. We love seeing this family spread across the world. The silence in Dr. Alistair's office wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the heavy, suffocating silence that presses down on you just before a storm breaks, or in this case, after the last flimsy thread of hope has snapped. I stared at the framed print of a serene beach scene on his wall, willing myself to be anywhere but there, anywhere but in that plush leather chair with its sterile scent. Marcus sat rigid beside me, his profile cold as stone. Dr. Alistair, a man whose kindness had felt genuine in our early consultations, now seemed to choose his words with the careful precision of someone handling a bomb. Imani, he began, his gaze softening with the pity I didn't want, his fingers tinted on his broad mahogany desk. We've reviewed all the tests, looked at every angle. While medicine rarely deals in absolutes, and the human body can sometimes surprise us, the results we have are conclusive. The likelihood of natural conception for you at this stage and with what we currently see is exceedingly low. He paused, letting the carefully chosen words hang in the air. I would say very, very improbable. Exceedingly low. Very, very improbable. The medical jargon, the gentle qualifiers like, rarely deals in absolutes, and at this stage, barely registered. All I heard was the deafening slam of a door on a future I had cherished since I was a little girl playing house. A dream Marcus and I had whispered about in the warm, tangled comfort of our newlywed bed 8 years ago. We were going to have 3 children, he'd said then, his voice thick with laughter and love. 2 boys and a girl, or maybe 2 girls and a boy. We weren't picky. We just wanted them, our children, reflections of the love we thought was invincible. But love, I was learning, wasn't invincible. It could be chipped away, eroded by monthly disappointments, by the invasive procedures that left me feeling more like a science experiment than a woman, by the hushed, pitying whispers of extended family, and most brutally, by the slow, chilling transformation of the man sitting next to me. Marcus hadn't always been like this. The Marcus I married was vibrant, his laughter infectious, his touch gentle. But with each negative pregnancy test, with each fruitless cycle of hope and despair, a layer of that warmth had peeled away. His frustration had first manifested as a quiet withdrawal, then as sharp, impatient sighs when I cried, and eventually as a simmering resentment that seemed to find fault in everything I did. The shared dream had become my solitary burden, his disappointment my personal failing. So that's it then? Marcus's voice sliced through the sterile air of the doctor's office, devoid of any emotion I could recognize. It was flat, cold. She's barren. That's the official word, is it? Despite your fancy talk about absolutes. Dr. Alistair flinched slightly at the crude term. Mr. Cole, that's a very harsh and inaccurate way to characterize it. As I said, the chances are exceedingly low, but the body can be unpredictable. We're talking about probabilities, not certainties carved in stone. There are other avenues, other possibilities to explore as a couple if you wish to build a family. No. Marcus cut him off, standing abruptly. His chair scraped against the polished floor, the sound unnaturally loud. There's nothing more to explore. He didn't look at me. He didn't offer a hand, a word of comfort, nothing. He just turned and walked out, leaving me to gather the shattered pieces of my hope and dignity under the doctor's sympathetic gaze. The doctor's gentle medical nuances about absolutes or the body's unpredictability were lost in the storm of Marcus's dismissal and my own crushing despair. To me, in that moment, exceedingly low, felt like a life sentence. The drive home was a blur of unshed tears and a roaring silence from Marcus that was more terrifying than any argument. I tried once to reach for his hand on the gear shift. Marcus, please, I whispered, my voice barely audible. He said it's not absolute. We can talk about this. There are options. He snatched his hand away as if burned. Options? What options, Imani? Adopting someone else's kid? Living a half-life? That's not what I signed up for. He as good as said it's impossible for you. His words, cold and deliberate, struck me like a physical blow. A half-life. Was that what I was to him now? Half a woman? When we reached our home, the beautiful 2-story house with the sprawling backyard I had naively imagined filled with the laughter of our children, he didn't help me out of the car. He strode ahead, unlocking the front door. And by the time I walked in, my legs trembling, he was already in the living room, his stance rigid, his face a mask of fury I'd never seen directed at me before. Not with such naked contempt. "I want you out, Imani," he said, the words dropping like stones into a deep, dark well. My breath caught. "Out? Marcus, what are you saying?" "Out of my house," he roared, his composure finally cracking, revealing the ugly, seething anger beneath. "This is my house. I paid for it. Every damn brick. And I won't have a barren woman living in it. A reminder of everything I can't have because of you." "Barren?" The word, his word, ricocheted around the room, around my skull. "Marcus, it's not a curse. The doctor himself said it." He laughed then, a harsh barking sound that held no humor, only malice. "The doctor said you're broken. Your body, you're the one who's defective, useless." He stepped closer, his eyes glinting. "You think anyone will want you now? A woman who can't even do the one thing she's meant to do? You'll die old. Old and alone. No children to visit you. No one to carry on your name because you couldn't even manage that. You'll be a lonely, forgotten old woman. That's your future." Each word was a fresh lash, tearing through the already raw wound in my soul. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unrestrained, but he didn't soften. If anything, my pain seemed to fuel his cruelty. "Pack your things," he sneered. "Whatever you can carry. I want you gone by tonight. Don't expect anything from me. You're getting nothing. You are nothing. Drop a heart if you've ever been told you were nothing by someone who was supposed to love you. Because I want you to know right now that their words were lies." Numbly, I went upstairs to our bedroom. His bedroom now, I supposed. My hands shook so violently I could barely unhook hangers. What could I carry? My life with him, 8 years of it, couldn't be condensed into a suitcase. But then he wasn't letting me take the life, was he? Just the empty shell of the woman he'd broken. I packed a few clothes, toiletries, the small worn teddy bear my own mother had given me when I was little, a pathetic little comfort. My wedding album lay on the nightstand. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. He was waiting by the door when I came down, my single suitcase bumping against my legs, my mother's teddy bear peeking out of my handbag. His face was impassive, his eyes cold. He didn't offer to help. He just opened the door wider. "Goodbye, Imani," he said, his voice flat. "Try not to let the loneliness eat you alive." The door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing the final, brutal severance of my marriage, my dreams, my very identity. I stood on the porch, the evening air cool against my tear-ravaged face, the small suitcase a pathetic symbol of my displacement. Where could I go? There was only one place. The taxi ride to my mother's house felt like an eternity. Each passing streetlight illuminated my tear-streaked face in the window's reflection, a ghost of the woman I used to be. Mama opened the door before I even knocked. Her warm, familiar face was etched with a worry that deepened into profound pain as she took in my suitcase, my swollen eyes, the teddy bear. She didn't say, "I told you so," though she'd had her reservations about Marcus's sharp edges from the start. She just opened her arms wide and I collapsed into them, the sobs I'd been trying to choke back finally erupting in a torrent of grief and humiliation. He kicked me out, Mama," I managed to gasp. He said I'm barren, that I'll die alone." "Oh, my sweet girl," she murmured, her hand stroking my hair, her own tears dampening my shoulder. "Hush now, you're home. You're not alone. You'll never be alone here." But as I lay in my childhood bed that night, surrounded by the scent of lavender and old memories offering fragile comfort, Marcus's vicious curse echoed in the darkness. Old and alone. Lonely, forgotten old woman. The doctor's hesitant words about absolutes were a distant, meaningless echo against the certainty of Marcus's cruelty and the gaping wound in my heart. In the raw desolation of that first night, I believed Marcus's prophecy with every broken piece of me. It was a crushing burden and I had no idea how I would ever find the strength to bear it. The first few weeks at Mama's house were a blur of unfamiliar yet deeply familiar grief. It wasn't the sharp, acute pain of losing a loved one to death, but the gnawing, hollow ache of being discarded, deemed unworthy. Mama was my rock, her quiet strength a constant presence. She didn't pry, didn't offer platitudes, just made me chamomile tea, ensured I ate something, and let me cry into her shoulder until my sobs subsided into ragged gasps. Her small 2-bedroom house, the one I'd grown up in, felt like a sanctuary. Yet every corner also reminded me of a life I once had, a future that had been stolen. The scent of her baking, once a profound comfort, now sometimes brought tears to my eyes, a reminder of the domestic bliss I tried so hard to create with Marcus. Sleep was a fitful escape, often punctured by vivid nightmares where Marcus's face, twisted in contempt, would loom over me, his voice echoing that terrible curse. Old and alone. Lonely, forgotten old woman. I'd wake up, heart pounding, the sheets damp with sweat, Mama's gentle hand already on my forehead, murmuring soothing words until the tremors passed. I felt like a child again, fragile and broken, and the shame of it was a heavy cloak. The divorce papers arrived via Kurt courier a month later. Marcus, true to his word, had handled everything with cold efficiency. There was nothing to contest. He'd made sure of that. He kept the house, the car, the life we had built. I was left with my clothes, my broken heart, and his parting gift of a prophecy I couldn't shake. Signing those papers in the quiet of Mama's living room felt like endorsing his judgment of me. Imani Adabo, barren, discarded. My friends, bless them, rallied. Aisha would come over with takeout and terrible reality TV, her boisterous laughter a temporary balm. Sarah, more pragmatic, tried to get me out for walks, gently suggesting grief counseling. I appreciated their efforts, I truly did. But there were times their well-meaning advice felt like sandpaper on an open wound. How could they understand the specific humiliation of being branded barren by the man who had vowed to love you? How could they grasp the chilling fear that his curse might actually come true? Some days the weight of it all made me want to pull the covers over my head and never emerge. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the days began to have a little more shape. Mama encouraged me to apply for teaching positions. You always had a gift with children, Imani, she'd say, her voice soft but firm. Don't let that man take your passions too. The thought of being around children, of nurturing young minds, was both appealing and terrifying. Appealing because it was a part of me I'd almost forgotten. Terrifying because it was a constant reminder of what Marcus had said I could never have for myself. But Mama was right. I needed a purpose beyond my grief. After countless applications and a few nerve-wracking interviews where I felt my smile was a brittle facade, I landed a position as a third-grade teacher at Northwood Elementary. The school wasn't fancy, but the principal, Mrs. Davies, had kind eyes and a firm handshake that promised support. Walking into my own classroom for the first time, with its colorful posters and rows of small desks, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet sense of anticipation. My students, with their boundless energy, their unfiltered questions, and their innocent affection, became my lifeline. Their small hands reaching for mine, their bright smiles when they finally understood a difficult concept, their unabashed hugs, these were tiny anchors in the turbulent sea of my emotions. I poured myself into teaching, into creating a warm, engaging space for them. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave me moments of genuine joy, a sense of usefulness that Marcus had tried so hard to extinguish. I was shaping young lives, making a difference. I wasn't useless. Years passed. 3, then 4. I was Miss Adabo now, a respected teacher. I had my own small apartment, a cozy haven I decorated with plants and books, a testament to my reclaimed independence. The sharp edges of my grief had softened, though the scars remained. Marcus's prophecy still echoed in my quieter moments. On lonely Saturday nights, when the silence of my apartment felt too loud, or when I saw happy families in the park, a pang of longing would inevitably surface. But it was a dull ache now, not the searing agony it once was. I was surviving. I was even, at times, content. Then one crisp autumn afternoon, just as I was starting to believe I had finally put Marcus and his cruelty behind me, an envelope arrived. It was thick, creamy, and expensive-looking, addressed in elegant calligraphy. My stomach clenched even before I saw the return address. Mr. and Mrs. Alastair Henderson request the pleasure of your company at the marriage of their daughter, Chloe, and to Mr. Marcus Damian Cole. Chloe Ann. A pretty, delicate name. I sank onto my sofa, the invitation trembling in my hand. He was getting married. Of course he was. He wouldn't have waited. He needed his legacy, his perfect family. The invitation wasn't just an announcement. It was a missile expertly aimed to wound. The wedding was to be held at the grandest hotel in the city, a lavish affair, no doubt. It was a deliberate flaunting of his new life, his new fertile bride, a calculated reminder of what he had and what I, in his eyes, would never attain. All the progress I thought I'd made, all the carefully constructed walls around my heart, crumbled in that moment. The humiliation, the anger, the profound sense of injustice, it all came rushing back, fresh and raw. He wasn't just moving on. He was dancing on the grave of our marriage, ensuring I knew just how thoroughly I had been replaced, how little I had ever meant. I wanted to scream, to tear the invitation into 1,000 pieces. I wanted to call him and unleash all the bitterness I had suppressed for so long. But as I stared at the embossed lettering, at his name linked with another woman's, something else stirred within me, something unexpected. Beneath the fresh wave of pain, a tiny, hard ember of defiance began to glow. He thought he could break me with this, did he? He thought this grand display of his new happiness would be the final nail in the coffin of my self-worth. For years his curse of a lonely, childless demise had haunted me. But looking at that invitation, at the arrogance and cruelty it represented, I felt a different kind of fire ignite. He would not define my future. His words would not be my epitaph. I didn't know how and I didn't know when, but I was not going to die old and alone, a forgotten woman. I would not let Marcus Cole have the last word on my life. That much I promised myself with a resolve that felt as sharp and unyielding as steel. If you think I was right to feel that way, write strength in the comments. If you think I should have just accepted his cruelty, write 1. But be honest with yourself about what you do. Marcus's wedding invitation, that crisp, cruel piece of cardstock, lay on my coffee table for a week. I didn't tear it up as my initial rage had urged. Instead, it became a strange sort of touchstone. Each time I looked at it, the pain would flare sharp and immediate, but then that ember of defiance I'd felt would burn a little brighter. He wanted this to crush me, to be the final, glittering testament to his victory and my desolation. I decided it would be the opposite. It would be the symbol of my refusal to be broken. I did not attend his wedding, of course. I imagined the lavish spectacle, Chloe and on his arm, the toasts to their fertile future, and then I deliberately put it out of my mind. Or at least tried to. The years that followed were about quiet reconstruction. I was in my late 30s now. My teaching career at Northwood Elementary was a source of steady, reliable joy. My third graders, then fourth, then fifth, were a constant stream of unfiltered honesty and affection. I was Miss Adabo, the teacher who made history come alive, the one who always had a listening ear. I built a life brick by brick, one that was mine alone. I took up pottery, finding a strange solace in shaping clay and creating something beautiful and whole from a formless lump. My small apartment bloomed with plants and the scent of the lavender I now grew on my windowsill. Friendships deepened. Aisha remained my boisterous confidant, always ready with a laugh or a shoulder to cry on. Sarah and her husband often invited me for dinner, a comfortable, unpretentious inclusion. I even ventured into the tentative world of dating, egged on by Aisha. There were a few awkward coffees, a disastrous dinner with a man who talked only about his ex-wife, and a brief, pleasant enough series of dates with a fellow teacher that fizzled out amicably. Each experience, while not leading to love, taught me something more about myself, about what I wanted, and more importantly, what I would no longer tolerate. The desperate need for validation that Marcus had instilled in me was slowly being replaced by a quiet self-assurance. I was whole on my own. Then Samuel Okoro walked into my life, not with a bang, but with the gentle unfolding of a sunrise. I met him at a community fundraiser for the local library, an event I'd almost skipped. He was an architect, introduced by a mutual acquaintance, and what struck me first were his eyes, kind, intelligent, with a hint of laughter crinkling at the corners. He didn't dominate the conversation. He listened. He asked thoughtful questions. He remembered the name of the obscure author I'd mentioned an hour earlier. Our first date was coffee, which stretched into a long walk through the park, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot. There was an ease between us, a comfortable rhythm to our conversation that felt blessedly normal yet wonderfully new. He spoke of his passion for sustainable design, his love for old jazz music, his slightly over-enthusiastic attempts at gardening. I found myself laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in what felt like an age. Still, the ghost of Marcus lingered. As Sam and I grew closer, as a few dates turned into seeing each other regularly, a familiar anxiety began to coil in my stomach. He was kind, respectful, everything Marcus hadn't been. But the fear of history repeating itself, the dread of that eventual, inevitable question about children, about my failure, was a constant hum beneath the surface of my happiness. One evening, after a particularly lovely dinner at his apartment, where he cooked a surprisingly delicious and only slightly burnt lasagna, I knew I had to tell him. If this was to be anything real, he needed to know the whole story, the ugly parts included. We were sitting on his sofa, a comfortable silence between us, a jazz record playing softly in the background. "Sam," I began, my heart thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird. "There's something you need to know about me, about my past." He turned, his expression open, patient. He simply waited. And so the words tumbled out, about Marcus, about the years of trying, the doctors, the devastating diagnosis as I perceived its finality, the cruel divorce, Marcus's parting curse, even the sting of his wedding invitation. I laid bare my deepest wound, my greatest shame, fully expecting him to recoil, to offer polite sympathies before making a hasty retreat. I watched his face, bracing myself for the familiar pity or worse, a subtle shift in his eyes that signaled I was now damaged goods. When I finished, my voice thick with unshed tears, he was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out, his hand covering mine, his touch warm and firm. "Imani," he said, his voice gentle but unwavering. "Thank you for telling me. Thank you for trusting me with that pain." He looked directly into my eyes. "What Marcus did, what he said, that was about his cruelty, his inadequacy, not yours. Your worth, the incredible woman you are, has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not you can bear children." Tears I hadn't realized I was holding back began to fall. "But what if you want children, Sam? A big family?" He smiled softly. "If children are meant for us, Imani, in whatever way they might come, then that would be a blessing. But the family I want first and foremost is with you. You are what matters to me. Your heart, your mind, your spirit. The rest, we figure it out together if and when we need to. Or we don't. And that's okay too." It was as if a massive, invisible weight I hadn't even been fully aware I was carrying had been lifted from my shoulders. With Sam, there were no conditions, no expectations tied to my biology. There was just acceptance, a profound and healing love for me, Imani Adabo, not Imani the potential mother or Imani the barren wife. Our partnership blossomed, built on a foundation of this deep respect and open communication. He celebrated my successes at school, listened patiently to my worries, and made me feel cherished in a way I'd forgotten was possible. A year later, on a crisp spring evening, during a quiet dinner at our favorite little Italian restaurant, Sam got down on one knee. There was no grand public spectacle, just him, his eyes shining with love, a simple, elegant ring in his hand. "Imani Adabo," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are the strongest, kindest, most incredible woman I have ever known. Will you do me the honor of being my wife?" My yes was immediate, joyful, and unclouded by the shadows of the past. Planning our wedding was a happy, collaborative affair. We wanted something small, intimate, a celebration of our love surrounded by the people who truly cherished us. Mama, Aisha, Sarah, a few close colleagues, Sam's warm and welcoming family. As the day approached, a deep sense of peace settled over me. I was finally marrying a man who loved all of me, a man who saw my worth beyond any biological function. The future felt bright, filled with a quiet, steady hope. Marcus and his taunts were a distant echo, a painful memory, but no longer the defining narrative of my life. Or so I hoped. Our wedding day dawned bright and clear, the kind of luminous May morning that feels pregnant with promise. Mama fussed over my dress, a simple yet elegant ivory gown that made me feel beautiful in a way I hadn't in years. Aisha was a whirlwind of excited energy, her laughter echoing through Mama's small house as she helped with my hair and makeup. Looking in the mirror, I saw not a broken woman, but Imani Adabo, soon to be Imani Okoro, a bride filled with a quiet, hopeful joy. The ceremony itself, held in a sun-dappled botanical garden, was everything I dreamed of, intimate, heartfelt, and utterly focused on the love Sam and I shared. When I looked into Sam's eyes as we exchanged our vows, his gaze warm and steady, I felt a profound sense of peace. His words, promising love, honor, and partnership, were not just words. They were a balm to old wounds, a foundation for a future I was eager to embrace. The reception was held at a charming nearby restaurant with a private garden patio. Soft music played, fairy lights twinkled as dusk began to settle, and the air was filled with the happy chatter of our closest friends and family. Mama was beaming, her eyes shining with unshed tears of happiness for me. Sam's parents had welcomed me with open arms, their warmth genuine and comforting. I watched Sam laugh with his brothers, his easy joy infectious, and my heart swelled. This was it. This was the happiness I had thought was lost to me forever. We were in the middle of heartfelt toasts. Aisha had just finished a hilariously embarrassing but deeply loving tribute when a ripple of unease went through the small crowd near the patio entrance. A figure silhouetted against the fading light stepped forward, and my blood ran cold. It couldn't be, but it was. Marcus. He looked much the same, impeccably dressed, an arrogant smirk playing on his lips, but his eyes held a glint of something venomous. He hadn't been invited, of course. His presence here was a deliberate act of malice, a violation of this sacred day. A hush fell over our guests as he sauntered further onto the patio, his gaze locking onto me. Well, Imani, he drawled, his voice loud enough to carry, dripping with sarcasm. Quite the little gathering. I almost didn't recognize you. Happiness, or perhaps just sheer desperation, looks different on you. I felt frozen, my hand instinctively gripping Sam's arm. The joyous atmosphere of moments before curdled, replaced by a thick, suffocating tension. This was my nightmare, Marcus, dragging his poison into the heart of my newfound joy. Marcus, Sam said, his voice low and steady, though I could feel the coiled strength in his arm beneath my fingers. He stepped slightly in front of me, a protective shield. You're not welcome here. I suggest you leave. Marcus let out a short, derisive laugh. Oh, I'm not welcome? What is this, Imani's consolation prize wedding? I just came to offer my congratulations and perhaps a little friendly advice to you, Sam, was it? He turned his sneer toward my husband. Make sure you know what you're getting into. This one, he gestured dismissively toward me, comes with a factory defect. Can't produce the goods if you catch my drift. Couldn't give me a real family, so don't expect one yourself. You'll be settling for second-hand happiness, my friend, and an empty nursery. Each word was a poison dart, aimed to inflict maximum pain, to humiliate me in front of everyone I loved. I could feel the blood draining from my face, the old shame, the familiar sting of his accusations threatening to overwhelm me. I saw Mama's face pale with fury, Aisha's hands clenched into fists. But before I could crumple, before the darkness could fully take hold, Sam acted. He didn't raise his voice, didn't resort to Marcus's level. Instead, he exuded an aura of unshakable calm and authority. That's enough, Sam stated, his voice like chilled steel. Your cruelty says far more about you than it ever could about my wife. He signaled discreetly to his two brothers and the restaurant manager, who were already moving forward. You will leave now, or you will be removed. Marcus, perhaps realizing he had misjudged Sam's quiet strength for weakness, or perhaps just enjoying the disruption he'd caused, gave one last smirk. Just thought you should know what you signed up for, he said, backing away slightly as Sam's brothers flanked him. Enjoy your empty life. And then he was gone, escorted out, his hateful laughter a faint, fading echo. The silence he left behind was heavy-charged. I was trembling, tears stinging my eyes, the beautiful fabric of my wedding day feeling irrevocably torn. How could he be so relentlessly cruel? Then Sam's hands were on my shoulders, turning me to face him, his eyes filled with a fierce, protective love that drowned out Marcus's venom. Imani, he said softly, his thumbs gently wiping away my tears. Look at me. That man means nothing. His words mean nothing. They are the pathetic ramblings of a bitter, unhappy person. He has no power here. He has no power over us. He cupped my face. I love you, Imani Okoro. All of you. Our family is right here in this moment with these people who love us. And our future is whatever we choose to make it together. Don't let him steal one more second of your joy. His words, his unwavering belief in me and us, were like a lifeline. I leaned into him, drawing strength from his warmth. Our guests, after a moment of stunned silence, began to murmur words of support. Aisha rushed to my side, her arm around my waist. Don't you let that sorry excuse for a man ruin your day, honey, she said fiercely. Mama squeezed my other hand, her eyes filled with love. The music started again, a little tentatively at first, then with more confidence. Sam took my hand and led me to the small dance floor. May I have this dance, Mrs. Okoro? He asked, his smile gentle. As we danced, held close in his arms, I could still feel the tremors of Marcus's intrusion. But I also felt something else, an incredible surge of love and gratitude for Sam. Marcus had tried to break us, to reassert his dominance and inflict pain. Instead, he had only succeeded in showcasing Sam's profound decency and the depth of his commitment. The ugliness of the incident paradoxically began to forge an even deeper bond between us. It was a harsh test on the very first day of our marriage, and Sam had met it with grace, strength, and unwavering love. Later that night, as we finally found quiet solitude, Sam held me close. He won't define us, Imani, he whispered. He won't touch the life we build. And I believed him. The quiet ache for children, the dream I thought had died with Marcus, was still there, a soft ember in my heart. But it was no longer a source of shame or a measure of my worth. My worth was reflected in the eyes of the good man who held me, a man who loved me for exactly who I was. Life with Sam was a sanctuary, a place of healing, and I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that together we were stronger than any shadow Marcus could ever cast. The years following our wedding settled into a rhythm of quiet joy and shared contentment. Life with Sam was everything I had once dreamed a partnership could be, a safe harbor, a constant source of laughter, and a place where I was loved unconditionally. We built a home together, not just the physical structure of our cozy little house with its burgeoning garden, Sam's enthusiasm far outweighing his skill, much to our amusement, but a home in each other. The shadow of Marcus's intrusion on our wedding day had faded, not forgotten, but stripped of its power to wound. It had, as Sam predicted, only strengthened our bond. I was now 42. The dream of children, once a burning inferno that had nearly consumed me, had softened into a quiet, bittersweet ache. There were moments, of course, a friend's baby shower, a glimpse of a mother tenderly stroking her child's hair, when the old longing would stir. But it no longer defined me. My life was full. My work as a teacher brought me immense satisfaction. My friendships were rich. And my love for Sam was the unwavering bedrock of my happiness. We had spoken gently about adoption a few years back, but life had a way of moving forward, and we'd found ourselves content in our companionship, our shared adventures, and the loving circle of our family and friends. I had made a fragile peace with the idea that motherhood in the biological sense was a chapter that would remain unwritten for me. Then one Tuesday morning I woke up feeling off. A peculiar wave of nausea washed over me as I was brewing my morning tea, a fatigue settling into my bones that no amount of sleep seemed to cure. Just stress, I told myself, attributing it to a particularly busy end of term at school. Or maybe I'm finally getting that flu that's been going around. But the feeling persisted, growing more pronounced each day. My breasts felt tender, a dull throb in my lower back became a constant companion. Perimenopause, perhaps. At 42, it was certainly a possibility. The thought of pregnancy, after all these years, after Dr. Alistair's grave pronouncement about exceedingly low likelihoods, didn't even cross my mind. It was a door I believed firmly shut and bolted. After 2 weeks of these strange symptoms, Sam, ever observant and caring, gently urged me to see Dr. Evans, my regular physician. Just to be sure, Angel, he said, his brow furrowed with concern. Probably nothing, but best to get it checked. I went more to appease him than anything, expecting to be told I needed to manage my stress better, or that my hormones were simply doing what hormones do at my age. Dr. Evans listened patiently, asked her usual thorough questions, and then suggested a routine blood test, including a pregnancy panel, just to rule everything out comprehensively. I almost laughed. Rule that out? It had been ruled out for me nearly a decade ago. A few days later, her nurse called. Imani, she said, her voice unusually bright. Dr. Evans would like to see you to discuss your results. Can you come in this afternoon? A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Discuss results. Usually it was just a quick call if everything was normal. Sam, sensing my anxiety, insisted on coming with me. We sat in Dr. Evans's familiar, calm office, the same serene beach print I remembered from Dr. Alistair's wall now seeming to mock me. Dr. Evans entered, a warm smile on her face that I couldn't quite decipher. She sat opposite us, looked at her notes, then directly at me, her eyes twinkling. Well, Imani, she began, sometimes life throws us the most wonderful curveballs. Your blood work is all clear on the general health front, but there's one result here that's quite definitive. She paused, letting the suspense build just a fraction. Congratulations. You're pregnant. The world tilted. Pregnant. Me. I stared at her, then at Sam, whose jaw had dropped, his eyes wide with disbelief. A wild, incredulous laugh bubbled up from my chest. Pregnant. I managed to stammer. Dr. Evans, are you absolutely sure? There must be a mistake. Years ago, I was told my chances were practically zero. Dr. Evans's smile softened. I'm absolutely sure. The hormone levels are unmistakable. As for what you were told years ago, practically zero, never means never. The human body can be remarkably surprising. And right now yours is busy performing a little miracle. A wave of emotion so potent it left me breathless washed over me. Shock, disbelief, an overwhelming tidal wave of joy that was so immense it brought tears to my eyes. Sam reached for my hand, his own trembling, his face alight with a wonder that mirrored my own. Pregnant. After all this time. It was impossible. It was a miracle. It was happening. The joy was compounded a few weeks later at our first ultrasound. The sonographer moved the wand across my belly, her brow furrowed in concentration. Then a slow smile spread across her face. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Okoro, she said, turning the screen toward us. It seems you're in for double the surprise. There are 2 heartbeats. You're having twins. Twins. If I thought my heart couldn't hold more joy, I was wrong. Sam squeezed my hand so tightly I thought my bones would crack, his eyes glistening. 2 babies. Our babies. It felt like every prayer I'd ever whispered, every tear I'd ever shed over my lost dream was being answered, and then some. The next few months were a whirlwind of happy preparations, doctor's visits, and sharing our incredible news with our overjoyed family and friends. Mama wept and prayed and immediately started knitting. Aisha threatened to throw the world's most extravagant baby shower. I was in my second trimester, feeling radiant, my belly beginning to swell with the promise of my 2 little miracles. I decided to share our happiness on Facebook, posting a picture Sam had taken of me cradling my bump, my face glowing, a caption that simply read, "Sometimes miracles come in pairs." Feeling incredibly blessed and overjoyed to announce that Sam and I are expecting twins later this year. Our hearts and my belly are so full. The outpouring of love and congratulations was immediate and heartwarming. Friends, family, former students, everyone celebrated with us. And then amidst the sea of well wishes, a comment appeared that made my blood run cold. It was from Marcus Cole. His words, sharp in public, leaped off the screen. "Still a liar, I see. Whose kids are you pretending are yours now, Imani? Some things never change." I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. The joyous bubble I'd been living in burst, pricked by his familiar venom. He was calling me a liar, publicly shaming me, trying to taint this sacred, precious gift. How could he be so cruel, so relentlessly hateful? Even now, after all these years, after he had moved on and remarried, he still found a way to try and diminish me, to poison my happiness. The shock gave way to a surge of white-hot anger and indignation so fierce it almost choked me. This time he had gone too far. Sam was by my side instantly, his arm a steadying presence around my shoulders, his eyes dark with anger on my behalf. "Don't let him get to you, Angel," he murmured, his voice a low rumble. "He's pathetic. This is what desperate, unhappy people do." He was right, of course. But something in me snapped. It wasn't just about protecting my own happiness anymore. It was about the 2 tiny lives I carried, about the sanctity of the miracle we'd been given. For years I had absorbed his cruelty, internalized his judgment. No more. "I have to call him, Sam," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, though a tempest raged within me. "I can't let this stand. Not this time." Sam searched my face, saw the resolve there, and nodded slowly. "All right, Imani, but you're not alone in this. I'm right here." My fingers trembled slightly as I dialed Marcus's number, a number I hadn't called in nearly a decade but had never quite forgotten, like a scar. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice smooth, arrogant. Well, if it isn't Imani. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" The old Imani would have faltered, intimidated by his condescending tone. But the Imani who was now a cherished wife and an expectant mother of twins found a strength she didn't know she possessed. "Marcus," I began, my voice clear and cutting, devoid of the tears he probably expected. "I saw your comment on my post. Your attempt to publicly humiliate me, to call me a liar about my own children, is beyond contemptible, even for you." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Just calling it like I see it, sweetheart. You couldn't give me a child, so forgive me if I find your sudden immaculate conception a bit far-fetched." Far-fetched? My anger flared hot and cleansing. "Let me tell you what's far-fetched, Marcus. It's a man so blinded by his own ego, so steeped in his own cruelty, that he'd rather believe his ex-wife is a liar than accept that life can hold joy and miracles for her after he discarded her." I took a deep breath. "You know, all those years you blamed me, all those times you called me barren, defective, useless. Did it ever once cross your narrow, self-absorbed mind that maybe, just maybe you were the problem?" There was a beat of silence on the other end, a silence so profound I could hear the frantic thumping of my own heart. Then a choke sound, something between a scoff and a gasp. That's ridiculous," he finally stammered. But the arrogance in his voice had cracked, replaced by a sliver of something I'd never heard from him before. "Uncertainty. Is it, Marcus?" I pressed, my voice relentless. "You've been remarried for years now, haven't you? Still waiting on that perfect heir from your perfect new wife? Perhaps it's time you looked in the mirror for the defect instead of trying to project your failings onto everyone else." I didn't wait for a response. I ended the call, my hand shaking, but my spirit soaring with a sense of release so profound it was almost dizzying. I had spoken my truth, not for his sake, but for mine. We didn't hear from Marcus directly after that. But news, as it often does in interconnected circles, eventually trickled back to us months later through a mutual acquaintance who had heard it from a cousin of Marcus's new wife, Chloe. Apparently, my words had burrowed under Marcus's skin like a parasite. The seed of doubt I'd planted had taken root and grown into a monstrous, consuming anxiety. He'd become obsessed paranoid. He'd secretly undergone fertility testing. The results, the acquaintance said, had shattered him. Marcus Cole, the man who prided himself on his virility, his supposed genetic superiority, the man who had built his entire case for divorcing me on my perceived barrenness, was diagnosed with severe male factor infertility. Irreversible. The irony was almost too cruel to savor, but it was a potent brew nonetheless. His world, built on such arrogant foundations, had crumbled. His wife, Chloe, who had apparently been desperate for children herself and had endured his increasingly erratic and narcissistic behavior, finally had enough. When she learned the truth of his infertility, and perhaps the full, unvarnished story of his cruelty to me, she divorced him. The acquaintance even mentioned, with a touch of grim satisfaction, that Chloe had reportedly thrown his own past words back at him in their final argument. "You're the one who can't give me a family. You're useless to me." Marcus, we heard, was devastated. A broken man. He lost his wife, his home again, and the very identity he had clung to so desperately. He was left alone with the ruins of his life, a mirror reflecting his own bitter prophecy back at him. As for me, my focus was on a different kind of unfolding. A few months after that fateful phone call, with Sam holding one hand and Mama the other, I gave birth to two beautiful, healthy babies. A boy, Samuel Jr., whom we called SJ, and a girl, Hope Alistair. Her middle name, a quiet nod to the doctor whose initial, exceedingly low likelihood, had, in its own way, paved the path for this miracle. Holding my twins, these precious, perfect beings, looking into Sam's adoring eyes, my heart felt like it might burst with a joy so pure, so profound, it eclipsed every shadow of the past. Our home was filled with a beautiful, chaotic symphony of baby gurgles, lullabies, and the deep, contented laughter of a family built on unwavering love and unexpected blessings. Sometimes late at night, rocking one of my babies to sleep, I would think of Marcus. There was no triumph in his downfall, not really, just a quiet, somber understanding of how life has a way of balancing its accounts. His cruelty had come full circle, leaving him with the very loneliness he had so viciously wished upon me. My life, however, was the antithesis of his curse. I wasn't old and alone. I was 42, a new mother, cherished by a wonderful husband, surrounded by a loving family, my life richer and more vibrant than I could have ever imagined. Marcus had tried to write my ending, but he had failed. My story was one of resilience, of unexpected miracles, and of a love that had healed the deepest wounds. And it was, I knew with every fiber of my being, still just beginning. If you think people like Marcus get what they deserve in the end, write justice in the comments. If you've ever been told you were broken but found out you were whole all along, drop a heart. And if this story reminds you that cruel words don't have to be your ending, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Tell me where you're listening from tonight. I want to know who's out there who's still believing that miracles can happen even when hope seems lost. Because they can, dear ones. They absolutely can. Like this video if my story touched your heart. Subscribe for more truths from women who refuse to stay broken, and remember, your worth was never determined by anyone else's cruelty. Never.